You're standing on a hillside that burned 6 months ago. Black trunks, gray ash underfoot. Nothing green for half a mile in any direction, except one thing. Tall spikes of purple flowers, taller than you are, rising straight out of the dead ground, right where nothing else has dared to grow back yet. Here's what should bother you about that. This plant didn't survive the fire. It needed the fire. And by the end of this video, you'll understand a hidden system running underneath every burned hillside in Southern California. One that decides, with total precision, exactly when a plant is allowed to live. Along the way, the chemical trick this plant uses that even trained botanists fall for, the reason it can hurt you without you ever touching it, and the identity crisis that has scientists arguing over what to even call it. Those flowers weren't growing in that ash. They were waiting in it. For years, maybe. You're walking across what looks like ordinary chaparral. Dry brush, dusty soil, nothing remarkable underfoot. Beneath you, at this very moment, seeds from this exact plant could already be there. Not growing, not dying, doing nothing at all. Some have been waiting for years. They're waiting for one specific thing: heat and smoke, and the exact signature that only a wildfire produces. That signature is the key. It's the only thing that unlocks them. This is a plant that has built its entire survival strategy around catastrophe. Disaster isn't a threat to it. Disaster is an invitation. But heat and smoke undersells what's actually happening. Stay with this one. The trigger is more specific than fire itself. Inside the smoke drifting off a burning hillside are chemical compounds with a name almost nobody outside a botany lab has ever heard: charikins. These molecules don't exist anywhere else in nature in meaningful quantities. They are produced almost exclusively by burning plant matter, and they drift into the soil dissolved in the first rain after a fire. A seed that has sat dormant for years can detect concentrations of this chemical as small as 1 part per billion, and that is enough to end the wait. 1 part per billion, that is the threshold between a seed staying asleep and a hillside turning purple. This plant isn't just waiting for fire, it is waiting for a specific molecule that fire happens to manufacture, and nothing else on Earth reliably does. And once that invitation arrives, what happens next is even stranger. Picture the same hillside, 4 months after the fire. It is no longer black. It is purple. Dense, shoulder-height shrubs packed so tightly across the burn scar that almost nothing else can compete for the space. This plant doesn't just return after fire. For a while, it owns the mountain. That ownership can last years, sometimes close to a decade, before slower growing trees finally crowd it back into dormancy. Then it disappears completely, drops its seeds, goes silent, and waits. Which means somewhere on a hillside that hasn't burned yet, this entire cycle is already loaded, waiting for a match it hasn't met. The fire explains why it's standing there. It doesn't explain what's happening to its leaves every spring before anyone notices. You crouch down to look closer at the plant, in early spring before it's fully woken up. The leaves are curling, coiling in on themselves, tight and springy, clustering into a shape that looks unmistakably like a curly-haired dog's fur. That single resemblance is the reason this plant carries the name it does. Hikers call it Poodle-dog bush, a name that sounds almost affectionate. It is hiding something those curls were never built to advertise. Reach out just slightly toward one of those leaves. What you can't see is that every one of those hairs is coated in a class of chemical compound called prenylated phenolics. On contact with skin, they trigger blistering from the same family of reaction as poison oak. Except hikers who've actually been through it describe something worse. Blistering that doesn't fade in days. Welts in places they don't remember touching anything at all. Here's a number that should bother you. Roughly 30 people on the same trail on the same afternoon, on a stretch of trail near Mount Wilson after a wildfire had cleared the slope and Poodle-dog bush had taken over a mile of the path. A group of about 30 trail runners moved through it in a single run. Some came out untouched. A few felt nothing more than a faint itch, but others were not so fortunate. By nightfall, several were describing arms, legs, and torsos burning worse than any poison oak they'd ever had. By the next day, the blisters had broken open. Stay with that detail. Broken open. Not from one accident, from walking the same mile that 30 other people walked. The plant didn't single anyone out. It didn't need to. It was simply standing in the only path through. And here's the part that doesn't make sense yet. You don't even need contact for this plant to find you. Crenellated phenolics. That's the part that blisters skin. It's not the part that put 3 hikers in urgent care without ever touching the plant. It's a breezy afternoon on the trail. You walk past the plant. You never touch it. You keep moving. Those same hairs have already lifted off the leaves, carried on the wind, drifting toward you and anyone else nearby. Hikers downwind have reported irritated eyes, irritated throats, real difficulty breathing, without ever laying a hand on the plant at all. And it doesn't end at the trailhead. Those hairs cling to fabric, a backpack strap, a pant leg that brushed a branch without you noticing. They can sit there for hours, then trigger a reaction from a piece of clothing that touched the plant on a completely different day. You can leave the mountain behind. The plant doesn't have to leave with you to still find you. A backpack strap can carry Poodle-dog bush's chemistry home with you. So can grabbing the wrong shrub on the trail, because right next to it grows something people brew as tea. You're looking at 2 plants growing a few feet apart on the same burned slope. Same general shape, same faint herbal smell. To a fast-moving hiker, they are nearly impossible to tell apart at a glance. One of them you could brew and drink without a second thought. It's called yerba santa. The other is Poodle-dog bush. And from a few feet away, even people who've studied this exact plant family for years can't always tell you which is which. If the experts can be fooled standing still with a field guide in hand, what chance does anyone have, moving fast, looking at the view instead of the leaves at their knees? So here's the one detail worth remembering, the thing that separates the 2 plants when nothing else will. As Poodle-dog bush matures, its lower leaves wither and drop away, leaving the upper growth bunched and curled, which is exactly when it most resembles a groomed poodle's tail, and exactly when its broken, drying hairs shed most easily into the air. Yerba Santa never does this. It keeps a fuller, more even covering of leaves down the entire stem, without that distinctive, thinning, curling crown. One more thing worth knowing. Clothing that brushes this plant should never go straight into a hamper with everything else. Isolate it, wash it alone, and if the smell or stickiness lingers afterward, some hikers don't risk wearing it again at all. None of this requires a botany degree. It requires knowing there are 2 plants on that hillside, and that only one of them curls like that on its way out. Yerba Santa and Poodle-dog bush share a smell a trained botanist can't always separate by nose. Botanists have had an even harder time separating this plant from itself. Somewhere in a research archive, there's a decades-old argument that still hasn't been resolved. Stay with this one. Even the people who study this plant for a living haven't agreed on it. When Poodle-dog bush was first formally classified, it was placed in one genus, then moved into an entirely new genus, created just for it and a few close relatives. That new genus name is shared, by pure coincidence, with a genus of sea snails. And today, while you're watching this, some classifications still don't agree on which genus this plant truly belongs to. Everything this plant can do to your body is completely settled science. What to even call it scientifically is not. A genus shared with a sea snail, a name borrowed from a poodle's curl. The one thing nobody's argued about is what happens to the people who get too close. That hillside isn't healed, it's loaded. Not far from where you live, if you're anywhere near these mountains, the same seeds that waited years for the last fire are already back in the soil, waiting for the next one. Every wildfire that moves through this landscape resets the exact same hidden system, in the exact same place, with the exact same plant standing by, ready. And once you know that, a blackened hillside stops looking like a wasteland recovering. It starts looking like something patient, something with a plan. The desert isn't empty after a fire. It's waiting. Type yes or no in the comments. Before this video, did you know fire could be the thing a plant actually needs to survive? And tell us, what's one ordinary looking patch of ground near you that you'll never walk past the same way again? Desert intelligence exists to find exactly these kinds of hidden systems, the ones running underneath the parts of the desert everyone assumes they already understand. Subscribe, and the next mystery comes to you before you even know you're looking for it.